right. Looks like all our attendees are coming in. Looks like that's starting to slow down. So we are in good shape. Excellent. All right. Well, good afternoon again to those who have joined us. We appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon. Translo, one of the leaders in solutions for technology in the country. And we're here today to talk with some of our clients to give us feedback, continual feedback from drivers, from administrators, from people in the industry, help make us better, help make all of us better. And we are remiss if we don't spend lots of time with each other learning best practices, learnings from this last few years, which have been an incredible roller coaster for all of us in this fantastic industry. We're going to spend a little bit of time this afternoon, going through some of the housekeeping issues that we need for this session. We're going to introduce our panelists that are with us today. And after we do that, we're going to jump right into understanding about where we're all at in the market. So again, welcome to our 2025 Freight Roundtable. Can't believe we are so close to 2025 already. So Frank, we can go ahead and go to the next slide if you don't mind, please, sir. Good. So a few housekeeping items. Again, thank you for being here today. Love questions. We would love people to speak up. There's a chat feature. Our administrators will help us if you post anything in chat to make sure that we get those questions for you. So please make sure that we hear from you. And again, the more voices, the more information that we share amongst each other, the better we all become. So again, thank you for coming and thank you doubly for participating. If there are any questions you feel that aren't covered here, anything can be gotten at contact@transflow.com. Feel free to email us after. We will make sure that we record this. The presentation will be made available. And you can see down in the Zoom button there is a Q&A and there is a chat. So please feel free to use either one of those during the session today. We'll keep those open and make sure we get to those questions as soon as possible. Okay, next slide, please. All right. Today, we're going to do a few things. We're going to meet the people who are going to be talking today, so we're really looking forward to that. Secondly, we're going to get into some roundtable questions. We have several questions that we're going to be talking about, and this is not a quiz. Our team here has already seen all of the questions so they can prepare and talk a little bit about what's going on, so that's going to be great. And then we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. Again, remember, chat your questions to us, hit the Q&A button, or if you want to save for questions at the end, raise a hand. We'll be happy to have you guys involved. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so who are we? Well, nice to see everybody today. I'm Dana Goldstein. I'm the Vice President of Sales Engineering at Transflow, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. Hopefully, I will be talking the least amount on this call, I promise. And I've been at Transflow now for 2 years. I've been in transportation for 20 years, and I've been focused mostly on how technology impacts both the driver and our back office. So really looking forward to hear how the industry is going so that Transflow continues to build those type of products that fit. Misty, you want to go next, please?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Misty Darnell. I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development and Accounting at Pascal Truck Lines and all the companies within the IPS family. I've been with PTL for 13 years, always been kind of in a role that works across the company in various areas, technology being one of them. Super excited about the roundtable today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, yeah, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Praveen Bopana. I'm Vice President of Technology at Bennett family of companies. It's comprised of like 14 different companies. We do everything from like hauling a pallet to a space rocket, I would say, like all kinds of diversification. And my responsibility as a vice president of technology is to kind of oversee the technology stack, make sure coming up with strategies that will take us forward. And we have a good partnership with Transflow, and we use several of those products. And glad to be here to share my insights.
Insights and wisdom. That's what we're looking for today. So thank you, guys. And unfortunately, John could not join us today, so we will be moving to the next slide, please. Great. All right. So $1 million question. We're always very interested in how the market has treated all of us. We mentioned before, it's been a bit of a roller coaster the last few years. I think we had the highest of highs after COVID and some new challenges that we've had to feature this year. So Misty, we're going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about how your 2024 has been?
Well, I definitely think no one on the call or any of the participants is susceptible to where the market's been. But basically we've been fortunate enough to maintain our margins in 2024, given the market conditions and what we've been dealt. However, we weren't really able to achieve the growth that we had hoped for overall this year. We planned kind of for level 2024 and with hopes that maybe towards the end we'd see some uptick. But it's been pretty flat all year, and we expect it to kind of remain that way.
Yeah, we've seen that too. And we keep hearing from everyone, oh, today's the day it gets great again. And we haven't seen that yet this year. So just like you, I was looking for good countermeasures. So Praveen, what about you? What have you seen so far in 2024?
Yeah, I'll have to agree with what Misty said. And I mean, I'm going to go back to here and say, freight market has been volatile, right? It's been a roller coaster. I think I'm going to echo your words, Danny. So it's up and down. There's certain areas that perform very well, not very well, better than the other areas. But overall, I feel like that the rates are flat, and the capacity has increased. So, and also the geopolitical attributes are actually kind of attributed to fuel prices, and there are other challenges. I know we're going to talk about it. But overall, we're doing okay. But the thing is, I'm going to say this out here. Every time we look at the 2024, we compare with 2022, right? Which is an outlier, right? So 2022 is right after the supply chain bottlenecks. So everyone was coming out of the panicking mode, like catching up with the inventory and all that. So there's a lot thrown at this trucking company. The capacity was low, and then the rates were higher, and then everything was switched in 2024. Now all of a sudden you're looking back 2 years before that and like, no, we're down or we're flat, right? So honestly, it's kind of like you need to look before 2020, right? Because you almost have to take the 2022 out. I know it's not the way we think, but 2022 is probably once in a lifetime that we see. Hopefully once in a lifetime we see, right?
Yeah. We could use that once every 3 years.
Yeah,
we do need to speed
I'd say every other year would be great for that, actually.
Don't get greedy on us, Misty. No, I say, Transpo has a really good view into the overall capacity in the market. And you mentioned that, Praveen, and that's something that we've really seen in 2024 change. Capacity went bonkers in 2022. I think everyone bought a truck. I keep expecting my wife to drive home, with one day. But then 2024, we have seen a huge decrease in capacity that's coming through. And it seems monthly hundreds of carriers are leaving the market. So we have some expectations that will normalize, but that's what we've seen so far this year. We just haven't seen a big change yet. Rates haven't really gone anywhere, and we haven't seen capacity impacted, but you're both right. Interesting year in 2024. I think we all learned a lot, and interested to see what 2025 brings. So that's great. All right, so next slide, please, sir. So I know we've touched on it just a little bit, and there are a lot of challenges that happened. And, we don't need to necessarily focus on 2024 specifically, but I think since 2022, what are some of the challenges that you guys have seen or experienced? And Praveen, I'll let you go first this time.
Yeah, those several challenges that I noticed and we noticed as a company. I'm sure it's the common across the industry. So the few things I would say out there, I'm pretty sure every trucking company is dealing with is the safety and the insurance premiums. I'm going to say those two, go along with each other. So because we focus heavily on safety, but it depends on how the overall industry is doing as far the premiums go. So even though you're have a stellar history with safety, depending on how the overall industry is doing, your premiums go up, right? So that's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of one of those challenges that we're dealing with, which means nothing but just stay on top of safety, make sure those claims are not there, right? The violations, CSA violation, roadside inspections, and things like that. The other part of it is the automation. It's not a challenge, but it's really a solution, in my opinion. But I'm going to get back to that, but let me go back to something else, is the regulations. that there are several regulations that are in pipeline. Some of them are being implemented at the state levels. I'm going to give you an example, like CARB. I'll just say one, right? CARB is one of the regulation that's being kind of pushed at the California level now, but I'm sure it's going to expand to the other states. So how do we deal with that? And then there's another one which is mostly impacts the companies with the business model of owner operator model is 85. I'm sure you all heard of that, which is an owner operator. Like it's a kind of a challenge to that. I don't know how that's gonna go, but that's kind of talked about it and caused a panic in the company, right? And how to deal with it, things like that. But those are the challenges that are out there, still not solved. The regulations part is we don't know until we know the clear guidance from the government, and with the administration changing, we don't know how that's going to go next year.
For sure. We can count on changes. That's the only thing that we can count to be consistently constant, right? It's an easy joke to make, but it seems every 4 years we have to completely change the way we do business. You mentioned the owner-operator model. That's important. You mentioned safety and how important that is. Do you think the safety piece is getting more challenging as you move forward?
Yeah, it's all. The safety is always challenging in my mind.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not about what procedures you put in place, what technology you put in place, also about like how the behavior of the drivers, right? Those safety behaviors. That's the technology is only going to solve up to some extent, right?
Yeah.
There's the AI cameras, the systems helping drivers to like adopt the better driving behavior.
Right.
But there's more on the driver side to adopt some of these changes or some of the tools that were put out there. But that's definitely a challenge nowadays, that the safety is one of the, we call it safety is the number one priority.
Yeah. And
100%.
so it sounds like to me, none of these are like particularly surprising to you then, right? You didn't really see any huge surprise. Yeah, we haven't either. That's another constant we have is we have the same challenges year over that we have to. So, and thank you, Praveen. So Misty, tell me a little bit from your side. What are some of the things that you saw?
Yeah, I would definitely echo safety is always a concern, and it is always priority number one for any large fleet out there today. With all the nuclear verdicts, those do not seem to be going away whatsoever. You're seeing, multi-million-dollar settlements out there pretty frequently for really stuff that, may not really be the actual trucking company's fault overall. We institute a great deal of safety technology within our fleet. We have, collision mitigation on all of our tractors. We have all the cameras, we have all the back office alerts, continuous training. That's always a concern for us. Praveen's point about regulations, we'll get to that, I think, on another slide, but yeah, that's always impactful. And something else, I'm going to throw a little curveball in here. Technology overall today can be somewhat challenging. There's new solutions. There's so many new vendors and technology solutions in our industry, kind of staying on top of that, staying on top of what's offered and what's next and what can make your company better overall. It takes a good deal of time and commitment, and you want to ensure you're partnering with the best solutions going forward that can help you in all of these areas with all of these challenges. Sure. Customers continuously make things more challenging as well as they're implementing new technology, making new requirements on us as carriers. So we got to be able to pivot on all of those quickly.
Yeah. We've talked about a couple of different things that kind of fall under the bucket of regulations when we talk about challenges. Is that something where you would welcome the government to come in and help with some of those? Because I know I heard you mention, Praveen, like the state regulations versus federal, and that can be a real challenge depending on where you're. So where do you guys think the government should step in? Do you welcome that, or is it kind of a catch-22?
Like welcoming it with subsidies on how to fund some of this? Yeah.
I think I understand some aspects, right? If you're talking about the customer asking for us to keep track of carbon emissions, footprint, right? What do you call that? Yeah, carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
I understand some of those aspects, but when you talk about the AB5 owner operator model, that's kind of I'm feeling like this is my opinion, right? The government overstepping right there because it's kind of challenging the entrepreneurship of a driver because they want to run their own business, and that's the one I'm hoping that the new administration come in and help with that.
Yeah. You mentioned CARB, and that's one that's a big one for anybody that runs in California. And we've seen the same feedback too. It's so difficult when it's one state who's running it. It's pretty strict restrictions, and it makes it much more difficult to deliver your freight in an economical way. Misty talked about margins in the beginning. Those are the types of things that can really start to dent your margin as you move forward. So that's great. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yep, absolutely. So we can go open the next slide here in just a second. So we've already touched on this a little bit because I was curious, but it seems like regulations impacted us a lot this year. Is it more lately? Do you see these things growing? Do you see it going away? I mean, kind of tell me what you think the future. Misty, I'll let you go first here. Where do you expect the future of how the government regulates us, where we fit into the industry? It seems like, anecdotally, every time something happens to transportation, the economy goes poor. When transportation goes well, the economy goes well, and then they tend to regulate us in a way that makes it difficult for us to do well. So did it affect your business a lot this year? What do you see the future? How do you see that going over the next, let's say, 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, I honestly don't see that changing whatsoever. I mean, you were spot on with what you just said. At every time we do well, it seems like there's additional regulations that come our way and make it more challenging. Regulations really didn't affect our business any more deeply this year than over the last few. I will say, obviously the EPA regulations coming between now and 2027 have a really significant impact on our asset cost. I mean, typically that's what a lot of the regulations do is just end up increasing cost for us carriers, right? And then, it's not necessarily a regulation directly to us, but all of the, sustainability goals that our customers are having and seeing and pushing down to us, that causes us to react and implement additional sustainability goals and things of that nature, which again, aren't free for us to do. They tend to cost additional money as well. I see that, obviously with the change with the election, we're hoping to see some relief on some regulations there, but we really don't know at this point. I do suspect that even on a state level, like Praveen mentioned, state level up to the federal level, we will continue to see pressure.
Yeah, and even we know that even if a administration comes in, they can't put new things out quickly, right? Things don't move very quickly, especially when it comes to helping us. So I see that. So you mentioned a little bit about asset purchase costs, and so I have to ask the question of where you see EVs going as part of that, because they're an expensive purchase now. There's been a lot of motivation out in the field about electric vehicles. Do you see that as a major factor moving forward?
Obviously it is, or we wouldn't be talking about it. But, for us, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense for a carrier like us at all. I don't think there's infrastructure to support it. I think it's a purely political movement, in my opinion. But yeah, the cost of those assets are they're very escalated, obviously. And for what gain? What gain is it to the carrier to implement this? So yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense currently to me. We stay on top of it, obviously, because we have to, and where it's going, and may even test some vehicles, but it's crazy, I think, at this point in time.
It's a very different driving experience. I'll tell you that. I have gotten to see one. It's a very different drive, but I think, and Praveen, I'll ask this to you, and then I'm going to let you answer the first question also, but do you think we have the infrastructure in the country to support EVs moving forward? Because we know regulations, if they keep moving that way, will become part of it. I haven't seen it, but what do you think? And tell me about some of the other questions too, please.
So no, I mean, the short answer is no. I mean, for the trucking, the infrastructure is not there, and we all know that. But to Misty's point, and some of these customers are, even the government actually enforcing, like, you got to use EV, right? You got to test it, POC, things like that, which kind of doesn't make sense not having an infrastructure in place and asking us to test something. However, I do want to say something from the business side. We got to keep that in back of our mind. Like, what if this kind of happens in next 5 years? The infrastructure is established, and you have to adopt, right? So you almost
Yeah.
have to prepare for it. You have to prepare for it. You have to prepare your technology, your business processes that change. So what we are doing is we're actually kind of have in our business, we're gathered a team kind of like, research on that front and see how it would impact, even though there may not be any impact now, but how it
Right.
would impact us and what is going on out there with autonomous trucking, electric vehicles. How is it going to impact and assess that, how that will impact to our business, and then put in plans ahead proactively to handle them. So yeah, that's kind of what our plan is for the autonomous trucking part of it, not the electric and autonomous trucking.
Hmm.
I don't remember what was the first question. Danny, you got to help me
Yeah,
with that.
no, it's fun to, but just any other regulations that have really impacted
Oh
you
yeah.
this year versus previous years.
I mean, again, like Misty said, it's not that these regulations are impacting us more than they were impacting before the last year, this year. But the ones that are in the works, and the one that kind of gives us a little bit of uh, nervousness is that around the AB5, right? That's the one we do have a lot of owner operators. So we are still preparing for it if we need to. But that's the one that can make it hard for us in certain areas. And that's the one that we're a little bit concerned.
Yep.
The
Yeah, I
overall
think it's something everybody's tracking.
Yeah, the overall regulations was other than carb, which is not a huge deal.
Right.
But the trucking is kind of always targeted with regulations. Not targeted, you know what I mean. So
I do. Um, improvement processes from our
yeah,
government through
improvement
regulation. That's
process.
how it works.
Right.
Targeted, maybe not the right word, but yeah, but that's how we feel. The drivers feel, especially drivers feel that way, right? When you're
Yeah, they
driving the truck and asking them to do, like they're already sitting in the truck for 14 hours a day, so you're asking them to do this extra step to be compliant in California. So that's also adds to their workload. Also, there's a cost to it for both driver and the business.
Yep. Yeah, that's. I think sometimes when regulations are passed down, they forget about the time cost. That's so because drivers, that's their biggest commodity on the road is the time they can use to work and drive, and how this impacts it. Yeah, great.
Mhm.
So, Praveen, I'll stay with you for the next question. We can grab the slide up if you guys want to, but so as we know, we've talked about there's so many different technology partners out there, so many different things. How have you mobilized technology to address these market conditions and challenges? What are some things you're doing now that you weren't doing before? What are some countermeasures you're deploying? And Praveen, again, we'll start with you, and then we'll go over to Misty for this one.
Sure, yeah. It's not more about the regulations, but overall technology wise, and a lot of the attendees know about this. There's a lot of AI coming into play. All right, we got to prepare for that and leverage the AI technologies. Um, the trucking industry is basically there's a lot of paperwork, right? Everything is a BO, is a paperwork, right? Confirmation. So you get a lot of those paperwork. There's how do we leverage the technology that's out there, right? I mean, this is modern technologies. After Chat GPT, everybody knows generative AI now. So how
Yeah.
do you use those kind of technologies to improve the efficiencies in the back office, right? And then almost like, no one, hopefully, majority of even if it's the 60% of the paperwork, you don't have to touch. Then obviously kind of once everything is done from the driver's side, load is delivered, nothing is touched, and we send the invoice to the customer, right? That's kind of what the goal should be for everyone. And then these technologies that we have right now enable us to get there. So that's kind of what we have been working on actually this year, also next year, most towards how do we leverage these AI technologies. And then there's some great partners already has this built in, right? And I even TransFlow we use the TransFlow workflow AI that's being implemented in one area. So there's some of those we need to leverage and then improve the back office efficiencies. Even on the safety side, there's more out there to proactively coach the drivers, like look at their behavior upfront and then get all these telematics data, all this stuff, compile into one platform, analyze the driving behaviors and reach out to them. So there's and coach them, right, to avoid any incidents in the future. So that's been the goal in the past, but now we are adding more AI technologies to it to proactively approach it. That even the next year after, that's what the focus is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I hear you mention speed to bill. I know how that important that is. And the more rates come down, the more important that becomes. So I know that's on front of everybody's mind, because none of us can pay our drivers, who are our most important thing, speed to bill, for our customers, all that. So, Misty, what about you?
Yeah, so we've been kind of revitalizing and adding to our tech stack over the last few years, and obviously we'll continue to do so in the foreseeable future. However, our goal with technology is to really be as nimble as possible and ensure, as an organization, we can pivot to challenges and needs quickly and efficiently. And that's really where our technology goals are aligned with internally. So, when we do have a customer that demands new processes or new information, we want to ensure that we can institute a solution quickly. If there's a new tech out there that we know is going to eliminate some back office manual tasks, we want to be able to implement that quickly, efficiently. If there's other areas of our business that need a solution, or our drivers need solutions, again, we want to be able to implement those things quickly and efficiently. We were talking before this webinar, we just had a customer that threw us a curveball and now wants our driver to do something completely different at their facility. So we're working with you guys on a solution for that today. But that's our goal and objective. And to Praveen's point, AI is going to be a big part of some of those solutions for us. But that's our overall agenda, is just how quickly can we change and pivot to the needs and challenges.
Sure. Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. And we see the same thing, right? Everybody needs to be faster, everybody needs to get things done quicker. And you always have to balance that with how we do it, if you want to do it well. Because good, fast, and cheap is always the joke, and it's important to be good.
You can't have all three. Yeah.
Yeah,
We want all three, though. It's got to be all.
Yeah, I know. Well,
working for a trucking company, you always have to have that flexibility, right? What customer wants, and like those codeballs, I'm sure you're used to it.
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
Right.
Yeah. Every other week you'll get a codeball if you're lucky. If not, every week.
Yeah, it's at some point it would be nice if all of our customers got together and had one process for everything, but that's never going to happen.
Right, yeah. It's getting worse.
Okay. So because of that, and that's a good question, we'll move on to the next question here, because we've talked about the challenges with mobilizing technology, but is there any area of freight tech that you're really excited about for 2025? So what are some of the things coming that you see in the future? I know we've touched on this a little bit, but what do you see coming down the road? What do you get excited about? What's going to make your jobs easier, even if you haven't seen it coming yet?
I definitely think the AI is such a buzzword and it's tossed around so much, but honestly, I'm excited about the continuation of AI integration throughout our industry. Just the possibilities with it for every sector, from our drivers, from our customers, from our back office people, from our frontline people. I mean, it just impacts everywhere. So I think that's going to continue on, obviously. I'm also really kind of intrigued to see how much more progress and growth there is in the autonomous sector. I think that's a much more probable for our future than the EV side, so to speak. So I'm interested to see the progress and growth there. We stay on top of that heavily, and I've talked about doing some trials and things, but those are two areas really that I see growing in the future.
Yeah, and Praveen, what about you? Any areas that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I echo with Misty there, the AI, especially generative AI, how we can leverage that to support drivers and even internal back offices. How can we increase the productivity of this? I mean, we want to grow. We want to grow as a company, but we don't need to grow the people to grow the company, right? That's kind of how we need to look at how do we leverage the technology to increase the productivity of do we have the workforce that we have to support the revenue growth. And that's what excites me is the definitely generative AI. And then one other thing is I think not I think the one thing that we everybody has to think about right now in this day and age, and trucking companies are a little bit behind, in my opinion, but maybe not, is how do we get to a data-driven model, right? So you get this huge data from telematics, drivers, I mean, all these coming in. How do we kind of leverage that data? Data is your asset, the biggest asset, right? So how do we leverage that? And how can you increase the quality of the data? And then once you have the quality of the data, that's when you think about the AI. So if you jump to AI directly without that, that's going to be an issue because the accuracy is going to be impacted without having the proper quality of data. So yeah, really my excitement is around AI. How can we leverage Gen AI and then back office automations and still focus on, I mean, that's going to be an ongoing focus, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, we're excited about a lot of trends that for 2025. And you mentioned autonomous trucks to begin with. That's a really exciting thing to talk about. It's also something that we don't talk to drivers a lot about, like how is that going to factor in? Because we're going to need drivers for a very long time, but how can we drive safety up? Does autonomy in the vehicle make safety better, worse on the road? Those are questions that I don't think we have the day-to-day answer. So to put your two answers together, I think there is a ton of data out there, and then how to use it is, boy, I think that's the challenge. And that's the things we're excited about for 2025, to make decisions so that, Misty, when you go, what truck do we purchase? Who do we hire? Where do we take stuff third party? What do we do internally? Those are questions we look forward to answering in 2025. So that's great. All right. So we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about something that isn't fun, but seems to be impacting every part of the transportation industry. And it's funny, I joke, I shouldn't even ask the first question because we already know the answer. Has fraud challenged you this past year? Most of us have to deal with that in some form or manner. And the big question, the really important one is, and Praveen, we'll start with you. Has fraud challenged you? In fact, what are we going to do to make sure it stops sometime? So we want to prevent this fraud out in this thing. So tell us a little bit about what you see.
Yeah. Before I jump into this, I want to share something for the prior question. I read this article, and this is so interesting, right? You know how we're talking about the electric vehicle. So I don't remember the university that's actually testing. They were testing a wireless charging for the trucks. So they're basically kind of putting I don't know how many miles, maybe 10 miles or so. They're putting some kind of the panels within the road. So when the truck goes over it, so it's kind of it charges it. It's very interesting. I don't remember the article, but look it up. It's very interesting. Coming back to this question, you're right. I'm not going to answer the first one because if I say the fraud is not a challenge for me, it's like me saying
nobody wants to say that, right?
Yeah, it's like me saying that technology security is not an issue. I mean, no one would ever say that, right? The technology security and the fraud, they're always there. It's about how you prevent it, right? That's always the case. The prevention part is really honestly hard. I mean, for the asset based is one thing, but if you're thinking about 3PL or broker side of it, that's a whole different area, right? So there's certain ways that we are handling it is like having that proper onboarding technology when you onboard it, like it's actually vetting the carriers the way it's supposed to. And then is it validating their MC numbers? Is it validating all these different criteria? And then having that platform up front and also periodically doing it, right? It's just, you may just do it once, but what happens like 2-3 months after? What if the carrier is actually compromised? there's always not just our side, there's always a fraud that could happen the other side and trying to target from that side. So, I mean, that's really how we're trying to prevent, we're putting policies and procedures in place, and then onboarding technology to the tools to verify these the carriers that we're onboarding and to prevent the fraud. But there's going to be some close calls no matter what you do. It's always about the common sense from the operation side, right? Hey, sometimes they actually send you an email with a one letter change, right? Switched, like for example, I take apple.com and just have one P instead of two P's, right? You think it's coming from Apple, right? So just pay attention to those small details. Sometimes actually, if it's too good to be true, it's definitely something that you need to look out for, right? That's kind of the education piece though, and we need to think through and educate the people who are dealing with these things on a daily basis.
Great. So Misty,
Yeah.
now you get to answer the fun question too.
Right. I'm gonna refuse to answer like Praveen did on the top side there. I will say though, thankfully, nothing has materially at this point in time, obviously impacted across the board. Knock on wood for sure there, but throughout our companies, we have a strong set of internal controls that we're continuously modifying and looking at. As challenges arise, we also utilize the help of tech, to aid us in fraud prevention. Additionally, we do mandatory monthly security risk trainings and assessments for all of our employees. It's a required training every single month. And our IT department really tries to stay on top of what's the newest threats out there. What do we need to educate our employees on? And then, one piece that we haven't done a lot of education on is our drivers. And, I expect that to become an increasing fraudulent, potentially fraudulent area as well as opposed to just cybersecurity. We see, threats on our brokerage side from what Praveen was talking about from different carriers, things like that, and have instituted, pretty much all the technology available in order to prevent those things. I think it's going to continue to remain an escalating threat. It's really just about the various avenues and of the attempted fraud and how they morph and mold, because that's going to continue to grow. Everybody's going to find a new methodology, a new way to try to attack. Seems like we have more people spending additional time in these areas as opposed to doing good things in the world, right? But we've just got to make sure we mold and tailor our security on the back end and defenses to protect ourselves.
Yeah. So we had a follow-up question about the cybersecurity piece, and they're asking, hey, it's generally a cat and mouse game. And I'll read this with their words. So 100% guarantees that breaches won't happen. So do you think it's a matter of what like insurance providers and underwriters are willing to take on in terms of risk, or where do you see the end game here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we obviously have insurance to prevent those things, but with the insurance, you are seeing more requirements every single year. Okay, now you have to do this and you have to do this, or we're not insured, or there's a caveat to the insurance. If you haven't dotted every I or crossed every T, I think that continues to expand to protect the insurance companies, which puts, again, more requirements on us internally to ensure that we're protected. And then if we're not, that we have a fail safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Okay. So as we get towards the end of our conversation here today, there's a question that's popped in the chat, and I think it's going to go well with the next question that we have on our next slide is, what do we expect in 2025? So you get to put your prognosticator hat on here for just a minute. And the question in the chat was, you're not going to be shocked to hear this. Do you think rates will increase, decrease, or stay the same in 2025? So Misty, I'll let you go first on this one. But what do you expect to see in 2025? And yes, you have to answer the rate question because all of us have to answer the rate question as we look at it next year.
Oh my goodness. Let me get out my magic 8-ball over here, right?
So
on the rate question, honestly, we're planning for a pretty flat first half of the year. as of right now. We are planning for a little uptick in rates towards the back half of next year. Again, it's anybody's guess at this point if that's actually going to happen. We've been in a significant downturn much longer than we've seen in a long, long time. So, when we were in the planning stages last year, we planned for a flat 2024 with hopes that we had an uptick in the last quarter of the year, and that didn't come really. So, I don't know that rates are necessarily going to escalate to what we saw maybe, in 2020, 2021, 2022 in those areas, but we're definitely hoping for some escalation in the back half of the year. I don't foresee it in the first half, from where we sit.
Yeah. So Praveen, what about you? I'll put you on the spot. I can't let Misty be the only one on the spot today.
No, like Misty said, I don't know if I'm being a little more optimistic, but I think we see some positive indicators, right? As we are coming to the end of the year, I'm hoping it will be first quarter, not not this first half. So maybe the second quarter we see some improvement. But like I said, we don't know, right? We're kind of guessing here. But the one thing is definitely there are certain aspects that we can. Anytime there's a downturn, it's always there are also opportunities for the companies that are with a good financial state, right? In the good financial state, there's some kind of like acquisitions and some organic growth. Organic growth is going to stall, but there's acquisition opportunities there. That's kind of what we keep our eyes open. So, and then when the market do pick up, right? So we're again on the full steam ahead, and then leveraging that additional capacity that we acquired during the flat season. So, but we are, I agree with the Misty, if not the first quarter, the second quarter, the later half of the year we should see some uptake in the rates and even the economy part of it. Right now, the economy is pretty much flat, in my opinion, although they're saying it's not, but it's really flat, and then maybe not even flat. So yeah, hoping that the economy and then trucking rates and everything could kind of pick up the later part of the year, next year.
I don't know what you're talking about. Everything is fantastic. Trust me. That's all I need to do. We had a good question in the chat. So, capacity and rates are very closely tied together. So where do you guys see the capacity compared today to at the peak a couple of years ago? So Misty, I'll let you go first. Do you see that capacity coming down and continuing that trend, or what are you seeing out in the market?
I think as the rate pressure continues to be low, you will see carriers still begin to exit, or still exit the market. We are heavily aligned for looking for acquisitions, and we've seen a continuous uptick in prospects over the last year or so. I think really the only saving grace that's happening right now with some of those carriers is the fuel prices are lower. And I think if you saw an increase in fuel, you definitely see that escalate. So I do think there is some capacity falling out of the market. You also have, some smaller carriers out there that can't keep up with a lot of the fast changing environment with the customers and what they require, and all of the efforts on the backside. They just can't keep up with some of that stuff either. So I think those pressures will continue to have some carriers fall out of the market. I just don't know if it's quick enough to impact rates, and turn that around significantly.
Yeah, they're so closely tied together and don't always have a direct correlation. So it's tough to predict. That's kind of where we're at today, right? It's hard to predict where we're going over the next 6 months. I'm going to go with Praveen though, just because he's more optimistic. Misty, I'm going to use his answer as my just I want to stay as optimistic.
In this case, I'm afraid I can't provide any more optimism than that.
You can't back it up. No,
because she's right. Because she's right. A lot of these carriers, small carriers, are trying to navigate the current conditions, right? The freight market conditions. One thing on top of it, I mean, I'm going to go back to this. The insurance premiums are kind of going up. So I believe actually this is I'm actually doing a more pessimistic outlook than Misty
Yeah.
did. So because of these insurance products and all that, and then going up maybe sometimes 50%, 100%, that would put some stress on these small carriers, would probably exit the market, and that would like reduce the capacity.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's enough, like Misty said, if it's enough to impact the rates.
Yeah. Well, we certainly hope so. Well, I think we haven't had bad news in a while, so we'll take that all as good news. And final question, anything specific you're looking forward to in 2025? Anything? So Praveen, I'll start with you. Anything specific that you're looking forward to? And then see if we have any other questions before we're done.
Um, then 2025, I think we went over all those areas of the autonomous trucking. How is that
Yep.
gonna come out? How is that gonna mature? We should say, right? Right now, it's not really mature enough for us to adopt it. On the electric vehicle side, there is some that we have to adopt because by force, I should say, like by
Yep.
but we need to keep an eye. We're going to keep an eye out for that. Also, the technology part of it, right? There's how do we provide these tools, and how do we add the efficiencies with the AI? How do we support our drivers, or the back office personnel, the business leaders to kind of get to that data driven? So that's data driven model that what we are targeting. So I mean, 2025 is going to be, I'm going to be a lot. I mean, we're all going to be busy is what I'm thinking. And also working with the right partners, bringing right solutions is the most important factor as well. The technology is changing in a rapid phase. I mean, the rapid is maybe not even a word. It's actually every day there is a new technology out there. Sometimes it's overwhelming to keep up. But I'm thinking like there's going to be something out there in 2025 that'll help the trucking industry to kind of adopt and in a better way, right? To can
Good.
impact in a better way. Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Misty, anything you're
Yeah,
looking
I
forward to?
mean, obviously hoping and looking forward to better market conditions, hopefully is number one. For us, we are a cross-border carrier into Mexico. I'm curious as how that business continues to present opportunities and evolve with nearshoring and what that could potentially bring to us. And obviously looking forward to what, if any, changes the new administration will make in a positive note to our industry and potentially those regulations that we had all talked about. Additionally, yeah, I'm looking forward to basically the technology and continuing to evolve and giving us new avenues to grow and automate things to become, a lower cost provider and conduct our business more effectively and efficiently.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and at Transfo, we're looking forward to continue to work with so many great carriers out there. We appreciate Misty and Praveen that you being with us today, sharing your information, sharing your wisdom, sharing your predictions. Really appreciate everyone who is online. We had a very large turnout to come listen to all of us talk today. And we really appreciate everybody taking time out in the middle of the week. We know how busy everybody is. And at Transfo, thank you again so much for everyone. Misty and Praveen, you've been fantastic. Loved it.
Yeah.
Appreciate talking to you guys, and everyone have a wonderful Thursday.
Thank you. You too.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Thanks.
Bye now. Have a great day.
You too.